Welcome to EdUp Curriculum. I am your host, Nicole Poff, and I am so excited about today's guest. Today we have with us David Birdsell from Kean University, not to be confused with Kean University. Kean University. I'm so excited about today, mainly because I love, 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 love the work this university is doing, and I think it's going to be just an inspirational session where we hear from someone who is moving and shaken and just really, really focused on the community they serve. And so, without further ado, David, thank you so much for joining us. Truly honored. I'm excited for today. Before we jump in, can you introduce yourself to the audience and just share what you want to share about yourself?
Sure. Thank you so much for those kind words, Nicole. It's a great pleasure to be here today. So my name is David Birdsell. I am the Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs at Kean University, a post that I've held for just a hair over 4 years now. And during that time, we've made a number of significant changes. We'll get to those in a while, but for me, I was previously Dean of the Marx School of Public and International Affairs at the Baruch College campus of the City University of New York, and spent a perilously long time in that role. But that was a formative experience in many ways because CUNY is a community serving institution, and it really helped shape and gave me a platform to begin to develop community engaged practices that sustain to this day. As a scholar, I am primarily a student of political communication. I've written on presidential debates and other forms of political media, and also on the nonprofit sector. I'm pleased to chair the board of the New York Council of Nonprofits, which is the only statewide service organization attending to the needs of the 123,000 nonprofits registered in the Empire State. And I sit on a nonprofit board for Engage NJ here in New Jersey as well.
Awesome. David, I am grateful you're here. I think this conversation is going to be fun. David and I talked before, just like I do all my guests. We kind of learn a little bit more about their institution, them. And one thing that I really just gravitated towards about Kean University is that you kind of described your institution as a place-based university. And so all of these questions that you wrestle with is like, what is a university supposed to do for the public, right? How do we serve them? Um, what is this? What does being a place-based university mean in practice? How does it guide your decisions?
Well, of course, all universities, with the possible exception of entirely online universities, are based somewhere. You've got physical facilities, you've got a brick and mortar presence. The question is, how do you recognize and use that brick and mortar presence to shape your mission, to extend opportunities for your students, and to make yourself useful to those around you who may or may not be enrolled in your programs or have children enrolled in your programs, or ultimately even seek to employ people who graduate from the institution. So we at Kean take very seriously the urban situation that we find ourselves in. The entire state of New Jersey is designated as the most urban state in the USA. We only have 9,500 people statewide, but they're densely settled. And of course, there are agricultural areas of the state. But if you look at pretty much everything from Trenton north, with the exception of the Western Mountain region, it's a densely settled area. So thinking about what that presents in terms of challenges for us and the populations around us, what it presents in terms of opportunities. How do we better improve our chances of capitalizing on those opportunities, whether they're economic, social, related to the way that people engage with one another, all kinds of things that make this such a vibrant area. And universities, and particularly Kean University, can contribute to the vibrancy of these communities. So that's what we do. We invite the community onto campus, literally and figuratively. We reach out, whether generation to generation, whether through our shared commitment to sound healthcare practices, research that fosters business innovation, that helps people design more effective healthcare programs, whatever the case may be, across the panoply of activities that a large university is involved with. That's the kind of thing that we want to place at the service of the community. And we feel that that is not only intention with, it actively complements the research portfolio that we have been building at great speed here at Kean.
I love it. I love it. So many institutions, I mean, Kane seems to have figured this out, but a lot of institutions are still kind of trying to wrestle with their identity, right? Online has become a lot more popular. They're seeing a dip in enrollment, and they're really trying to figure out what is our place here, right? If we have a physical footprint or geographical area, they're trying to figure that out. How did you tell me you guys can ask kind of a simple question, which is what challenges are facing the community? Which I think is an interesting approach because a lot of people I think are trying to solve a problem and they don't know what they're trying to solve yet. They start with the solution, not the problem. And you guys start with the challenges that the community is facing. How does that help keep Kane anchored, responsive? What does that look like?
So, this is a time of unprecedented challenge in higher education. Some of the challenges have antecedents, for instance, the ebb and flow of demography, although we are particularly at risk given the erosion in the 18 to 25-year-old population, a trend that will continue for roughly the next decade before it begins to recover in the middle of the 2030s. But that becomes a serious challenge for institutions that are focused primarily on traditional college age students. There just won't be as many of them. Add to that the extraordinary pace of new regulatory instructions from the federal government, many of which target specific practices at universities, some of which those universities have embraced for many, many years. And you either have to find ways not to do that or to do them in a manner that the federal administration believes to be consistent with its funding and resource distribution priorities. Many universities have chosen to take a sharp stance against those approaches. But whatever your strategy, it's an unprecedented challenge. And right along with that, and not unrelated, is the cost of university, which continues to soar, and the concomitant lack of trust that most people, many people in America, have in their academic institutions. I've been in this business for a long time, 4+ decades, and there has never been a point during my practice when there has been less faith in academic institutions, faith that they provide value, faith that their research matters, faith that you will benefit from your contact with universities. And we need urgently, as an industry, I'm talking about every kind of institution in every community in the country, to reestablish those bonds of trust. And I think we do that to a certain extent by making common cause with the people around us. This is not a partisan issue. It's not a political posture. It's a service orientation. It's the notion that what we do in discovery should involve the people who will be the subjects of those inquiries, but will also be able to benefit in ways that they should be able to help shape from the kinds of work that we do. It's not going to change necessarily the conclusions of the research, but it may change some of the questions that we ask. It may change our ability to be observant in ways that we cannot be on our own, but can be in concert with community partners. It's a way to think about where the community wants to see you build. Because ultimately, and again, community can be defined in terms of geographic adjacencies. It can be defined in terms of shared interests, healthcare, housing, law, business, whatever it might be. And so you can extend in a variety of directions. It doesn't just have to be people in your immediate geographic catchment. But what do they want? What do they need? And how can you help them achieve that? It's a position of humility. It is a position of service first. It is a position that anchor institutions, and we do understand ourselves as an anchor institution across the nation and indeed around the world, have to be able to ask and act upon incredible, sensitive, and communicatively rich ways if we're going to be able to harness that energy and address those problems. But I think that orientation is one of the reasons that Kean has had 4 straight record years of freshman enrollment, that we have seen our numbers swell from just a hair under 16,000 when I arrived to a hair over 19,000 now. And this is before undertaking large new initiatives such as the acquisition of the the New Jersey City University campus, which is underway right now. And that merger is expected to finalize in the summer of 26. Tremendous amount of work, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that later. But even before we begin to think about those numbers, this is a university on the move. The last thing that I want to say about this is that demographic cliff that I mentioned does mean that there will be fewer traditional aged college students available to enroll anywhere. That does not mean that every institution will see the same kind of erosion of enrollment from that age bracket. Some will see enrollment declines so catastrophic that they'll be forced to close or merge. Others will take the people who might have enrolled in institution A, and then they'll be enrolling in institution B or C instead. So we can expect to see a pretty significant reduction in the institutional census of colleges and universities, up at about 4,000, give or take, right now. It might be down as low as 3,200 to 3,000 when we reconvene in 2032, 2033. And that's something that we all have to take very seriously, and we have to think about how we best steward the interests of the public, which are still, whether they recognize it or not, very much involved with higher education. Our job is respectfully and humbly to help them recognize those value propositions.
That could have been a TED Talk. Um, something that you started this off with kind of describing the seriousness of the state of higher ed, right? There's a distrust, there's a demographic cliff. I mean, all of these kind of heavy things. There's a federal administration, right? There's all these things that are circling us. And in times like now, a lot of institutions that I'm talking to are like, we're just trying to keep our footing. It's a good day for us if we can just stay. If we can just stay. You're not taking that approach. You're not just standing still, not knowing which direction to go. When I say you, I mean you and Kean are still moving. You're still marching forward despite kind of this undertone of ick, to describe it. What keeps you guys motivated to keep going and not take the stance of we're just going to try to fly under the radar, ride through the next 4 years and hope that we still have an institution at the end of it? What inspires you to keep growing, to keep building, to keep bringing things into the Kean University kind of extension?
So that's such a wonderful question, and there are several answers. It starts with our leader, President Repillette, who came aboard in the summer of 2020 and very boldly, for an institution that was at the time a master's large program institution with no research role in terms of the Carnegie classifications. He set the goal of becoming an R2 research institution. Two ranking or rating cycles. They hate when we use the word ranking, but classification cycles down the road. And that was energizing. It was a goal that made sense to people on the campus, even if some had a difficult time imagining how they might wrap their mind around that. But it starts with a leader who does say, we were going to do something differently than we've ever done before. We're going to put resources behind it, and we're going to make it work. The other thing that he did out of the gate was to talk about our role as an anchor institution, serving the community in ways that I've described over the last few minutes. And what it does is place the university into positions that it hadn't been previously. I think if we go back to the way that you framed this question, Nicole, that there are a number of institutions that are just kind of like, let's not try to do too much right now. The environment is too uncertain. Survival is where we need to be. You're less likely to survive if you're not on the move. The traditional things that universities do, those markets are shrinking. Those value propositions are poorly understood. And some of our traditional make-dos, which are often truly sterling opportunities, I don't mean to poo-poo them in any way, such as making sure that we have streams of international students if we aren't being able to identify domestic students who can take advantage of our programs. And that's a real spigot, but very much turned off as that trust equation begins to deteriorate not only at home, but abroad, particularly in China and India, which have been the predominant sources of foreign student enrollment during this period of time. So where do you find students? In part, you find them up the age spectrum. So we have an initiative that very much supports the vision of the governor of New Jersey to provide college degrees to people who have some academic credit but no credential. And we have about 2,500 such folks enrolled in our Kean Global Campus, an entirely asynchronous online arm of the university, which provides that opportunity, very rigorously focused on what those folks want, which is career preparation, which is a degree that is meaningful in the market, and which gives them a process, which gives them a reasonable chance to tuck in this kind of learning while they pursue careers, raise families, doing whatever they do in their very busy lives. We are engaging regularly with institutional partners in the nonprofit sector, in the government sector, in local industry, so that we can find out what they need. What do you need in order to prepare a workforce? What do you need in order to make sure your business operations are safe and consistent? We developed a new cybersecurity center and a cybersecurity certificate directly in response to so many businesses who are rightfully concerned about the integrity of their computer systems, the vulnerability of those systems, and needing professionals who have those capacities to batten down the hatches and make them safer over an extended period of time. So it's that sort of ear to the ground approach, and not always sort of running where everybody else is running, but making sure that you're expanding markets, that you have the partners to help do that. And those partnerships create sort of mini advertising networks, right? Where you have clusters of employees who might range from several hundred to several tens of thousands. You need to think about the economic circumstances in your region. I sit just miles away from the Port of Elizabeth, and that stretches up to the mouth of the Hudson with the Hudson County shipyards and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. And when we fully merge with New Jersey City University, we will own the entire littoral in the sense that we will be the academic institutions closest to the industrial waterfront in New Jersey. So should we be thinking about transportation and logistics as academic programs and as a hundreds thousand strong workforce in this region? You bet. So these are the kinds of things that we're doing to remain relevant and responsive. There are more strategies, but I think that leaning into where you are, leaning into what's not being done, even if it's not traditional for universities to do that work. If I take the example of transportation and logistics, there are plenty of logistics programs in the United States. There are only two that are focused on ports. One at the Newport News location of Old Dominion University, and another at the Monterey Institute of California, which is actually linked to Middlebury College in New England, but does its work in coastal California, where where the largest port in the United States exists. So these are, and we're number three, and here in New York, and so it's an enormous opportunity. That's an opportunity we're going to take advantage of.
I have a question. So there's all these things. You guys, ear to the ground, you're responding to the market quickly, right? You're listening to employers. A lot of times higher ed can't, I'm going to say can't in air quotes, because our governance processes are really what bind us sometimes. They feel, let's say that they feel as though they can't move as fast, right? They can't respond to the local needs as quickly because there's a long series of governance steps that can make an initiative take 2 to 4 years before it even sees life, right? And if we're responding, then we might need to respond a little bit faster than we're going to set a 5-year strategic plan and see that through and not take on any new initiatives in the next 5 years because we might miss it. My question here is, how do you guys do that? How do you respond to the needs in an efficient way where you're not 5 years post idea to execution? What if is there anything unique that you guys do in terms of structure or getting initiatives through that allow you to just be more action focused?
I don't think that what we do is necessarily unique in the sense that no one has ever done these things. I think it's rare to find a university that does all of them at the same time. So, a couple of strategies. One is to work through non credit curricula, which are typically much more flexible and that might address very specific needs of communities that have less investment in the academic credential per se, but do want some recognition that they have mastered some set of skills. And this happens at a number of universities under, whether we call it badging or micro credentials or whatever it is. And the term micro credential is so squishy in the field. It means anything from something that you might undertake on 2 assignments in a single class to a collection of classes. But we tend to think of it as having more or less the weight of a certificate or a minor. And the non-credit certificates convey real value. You have to make sure that you have a brand that can stand behind that it's not just generating paper or a little star on your LinkedIn page. It's a real meaningful preparation in whatever that area is. If you involve faculty in that work, which we always try to do, that then creates a champion to translate that into the creation of a minor, the creation of a major, the creation of a credit-bearing certificate, which then brings more people into the academic process, both as creators on the curriculum side and as potential clients on the student side, as people respond to the demand that you're able to address through other means in the short run. We also have been taking a very hard look at our general education curriculum and trying to both pare that down so that it's more efficient, but also focused on the things that are genuinely needed across the array of majors that we offer, so that everybody can have a shared experience that is lean, that allows them to move quickly into majors. And we're looking at pulling those majors themselves down into the smallest packages consistent with our licensure and accreditation obligations on the one hand, but also the excellence of our programs in comparison with other institutions in the United States. This creates more room in the curriculum. And for things like minors, I'm a big fan of interdisciplinary minors in things like data analytics and things like urban systems and things like supply chain, which could be done at a major level, but can be done in very satisfying and meaningful ways in sort of more bite-sized minors. So what we envisage in a year or two is that people will be able to move through Kean, all of the required coursework, all of your major coursework in very rapid fashion, and that you can do all that in 90 credits or fewer. And then you have the room in your schedule to take interdisciplinary minors, which will significantly increase your value in the marketplace. Just one example, we have the state's first and one of the nation's first Bachelor of Science degrees in artificial intelligence. The wonderful computer scientists predominantly and mathematicians who have designed that program have now designed a series of minors, which is AI in. And what that means is a 3-course prep and a 12-credit sequence in AI per se, how to use it, what it is, how it deals with data, how you can engineer your prompt structures, et cetera. And then the final course in that sequence is a course in sociology or political science or marketing or whatever the case might be. And so you get the AI in whatever that subject is. So the minors are major adjacent, or they could be adjacent to a major that the student decided not to take or not to double major in, but want some exposure, experience, and depth. So this is a way to be more responsive more rapidly. If those minors are also cast as certificates, it's another way to open a market as well for people who either already have baccalaureate degrees or don't have a baccalaureate degree. They have an immediate need for some focused course of study relevant to their employer or employer to be, perhaps, but then they're also a little bit closer to that actual degree credential. So in thinking about all of these things, this allows us to move a little bit more rapidly, creating space in the curriculum, using a balance in credit and non-credit packages for courses, and thinking about what's going to be attractive to both presently enrolled students and to an outside market on a certificated basis.
This is a great approach because a lot of times when we think we want to offer X to the public, we think a new program, right? And we think of a traditional program. We're going to create a bachelor's degree in blank, and then that goes to the governance process, right? We have to first come up with what is the course structure going to look like, what courses will be in there, what's the, all the logistics. We have to get all that approved, and that can take a lot of time. You guys, it sounds like, do kind of the opposite. You start with the easier path in, which might be micro credentials, adding some minors, which isn't the cumbersome process of a new program. Instead, you start down here and let it develop fingers into the university, instead of we have to have this beautiful, perfect package of a new bachelor's degree. It's going to take us 4 years to develop. Oh, 4 years later, oh, no one's coming. So, like, we're too late. You guys can get there fast with not going the new program approach, new traditional credit program approach.
That's absolutely right. Get the ball rolling is the notion, and then you pick up momentum. Of course, sometimes you try to get the ball rolling, and there aren't the buyers that you thought there were going to be. And at that stage, and I encourage faculty to do this sort of thing. I mean, it's fine to fail as long as you learn from the failure and limit the downsides once you do. So we can experiment very quickly with a number of different approaches, and then take the things that are working best and build that larger infrastructure when we know that we've got a very solid base of demand out in these arenas. And when we do this too, because we try to do it in partnership with the spread of institutions that I mentioned a while ago, that it gets faculty thinking about those partnerships, right? What is necessary to make them work, and it reframes the way that they're thinking a little bit. Instead of thinking, about the discipline, whatever the discipline is, and only that. And I pledge fealty to my discipline and what my discipline tells me I should be doing at a certain point in time. It's a need to respond to a partner, right? And then it's what can my discipline, or perhaps somebody else in a discipline adjacent to mine, craft to be responsive to that partner. So this is all striking the chord of public engagement, right? That you're always thinking about who the audience is for the work that you're doing, and how can you create and satisfy, that's important, satisfy the demand that is inherent or can be built in that group. And oftentimes small tastes of a well-designed, responsive academic program in the form of a certificate or a minor can convince somebody, hey, this is kind of great. In my old post at the Mark School of Public and International Affairs, we developed a very large set of leadership programs in concert with umbrella organizations in the nonprofit community. And those were all offered as non-credit certificates. But 20% of the students who enrolled in those programs, and there were thousands of them, came and got Master of Public Administration degrees, because they were sort of, this is the course of study. And particularly for a program like the MPA, which it's not as famous, it's not as well known as an MBA, but it introduces people to a structured way to learn about institutional leadership in the public sector. So these kinds of things can be very, very effective. I know that faculty in a number of places and institutions overall often see them as cannibalistic on degree programs. Why get the degree if you can get the cert? But it actually works the other way. The certificate creates the appetite for the degree more often than not, and the degree programs become stronger right along with that leading offering, which has to have independent value, has to be rigorous, and has to be of high quality. But that, with good teachers in the front of the room, is going to bring other people into your programs.
Absolutely. I always say if we get the classroom right, then a lot of our other problems kind of start to take care of themselves. And you just described a perfect kind of demonstration of that scaffolding, right? Like, get them in a certificate, but have good faculty keeping them engaged. That is going to allow them to use their skills a little bit faster, to where they complete that certificate and maybe they're ready for work. But like you said, they have an appetite to continue. So they're not waiting that 4 years before they can switch careers. They're getting a little bit of, a taste of it, enough skills to enter the market. They're gaining experience, they're continuing their degree. And then at the end, you kind of have this perfect candidate for roles. It's really it's a good example of just thinking about the complexity of ROI, the classroom, faculty. I have a question though, and it's going to seem really simple, but I think it's an important one. You guys are responding to the needs of the community kind of all the time, right? And so what I imagine is this is how it plays out in my head, is that there's something on the news or there's some sort of announcement regarding, the state of New Jersey, right? And your a meeting is formed, right, between you guys where you start talking about this. Who in your university is responsible for, or maybe responsible isn't a great idea or a great term. Who who in your university keeps their ear to the ground? Who's responsible to do that, to kind of keep a focus on what's happening within our community? Is it one person? Is it a university-wide expectation? Can a faculty member come to, someone and say, "Hey, I think this is happening in the state of New Jersey, and I think this is important. We should be paying attention to this." What does that look like at Kean?
All of the above and everyone. So we have a president, Dr. Repillette, who is very connected to New Jersey government. He served Governor Murphy in his first term as Commissioner of Education. So he has lots of good connections, is very conversant with what's going on in the state. We have a government affairs office that does really good work in that regard as well, creating opportunities as well as responding to requests that they hear about and that we have the capacity to respond to. We have an institute on campus, the John S. Watson Institute for Public Policy, that does a number of things. They take commissioned public policy studies, but they are also the research backbone for an organization called the New Jersey Urban Mayors Association, as well as for the Black and Hispanic caucuses in the legislature. So we're pretty well connected to what leadership is thinking on the elected side of life, but also to organizations that are funded and interacting with electeds and others so that we know what their needs are. We know what they're asking others about and can respond in that way. New Jersey is sort of unique in that we have the largest municipality census in the country. There are 565 municipalities in the state of New Jersey. Now, there's some people, there's a gubernatorial campaign going on right now that's arguing about whether that's a good thing or not, but it's a fact right now. And every one of those municipalities has a school district, has a fire department. There are some shared services agreements, but in the eyes of many, not enough. But what it is, too, is an opportunity to focus attention on the needs of those 563 municipalities. And those are the kinds of things we keep our ear to the ground all the time. Of course, not all of those things burble to the top of mind for elected leaders or otherwise. So we very much rely on our faculty members who are close to communities that they serve. We have, for example, a really marvelous environmental scientist who works with local communities on reforestation projects, a microforest program. This was something that we didn't hear out of Trenton. We didn't hear out of leadership. It was her work that was recently featured in the New York Times, and which is just heartwarming in so many ways, with a reforestation effort that can actually work in urban communities and provide the advantages of immediate contact with nature, whether those are health advantages, environmental advantages, heat reduction programs in areas that overheat because of loss of vegetation, all these kinds of things that produce benefit and that we hear about through our faculty members. We have had the privilege of being able to hire prodigiously over the course of these last 4 years. 54% of our faculty, tenure stream faculty, and that means people both aspiring to tenure and people who are already tenured, 54% of them are new since 2021. And that means that we have an enormous amount of energy and productive scholars, every single one of them, who are engaged with communities in ways that we didn't have deep roots in Kean, at Kean prior to their arrival. And we leverage that. And that's one of the reasons that we're so heavily engaged right now in computational biology projects, which have resonance with the pharmaceutical community here in New Jersey, which is excellent career preparation for our students, but where we can also engage internationally, for example, with a wonderful series of partnerships with the Industrial Training and Research Organization in Brazil, SENAI, where we're doing computational biology projects oriented toward finding medicines to address the ravages of the Zika virus, which has bedeviled Brazil. It started right about the time of the Summer Olympics, some 9 years ago at this point. And these are the kinds of things that have such resonance for communities and show how the research activities can couple with the educational activities and provide accelerated community service across a range of outcomes and activities.
Yes to that. And I think let's go back to, I'm going to take us back to, you guys were not R2 before. You just mentioned 54% of your faculty have been hired, onboarded within the last 4 years,
That's right.
5 years.
Yeah, I came aboard in August of 21, and this is all subsequent to August of 21.
So let's talk about that, kind of the move to R2. What had to happen? I mean, there's a lot of institutions who would love to be able to say in 5 years we did all this. So talk to us about that. Was 2020 the place to start? Like, I think you mentioned you guys had a few publications back then. What has changed since then?
Well, let me talk a little bit about what we needed to do and what has been a result of doing those things. So we did not have a robust research infrastructure. Our laboratory spaces were decrepit. We didn't necessarily have the computing power that we needed to engage in computationally intensive forms of research. And we lacked the faculty bandwidth that we needed for deep dives into pretty much every subject area. There were, of course, some fine scholars on campus at the time that I arrived in this position, but not enough of them to sustain an R2 effort, not even close. So we knew that we had to hire and hire aggressively. We had an opportunity to do that because Kean was in very good shape financially and had, for a variety of reasons, not hired many tenure track faculty for a period of 15 years prior to 2020. So there were gaps to fill that were actually supported in budget. The university had during that period relied disproportionately on at-will employees in the form of lecturers, many of whom are excellent instructors, but under the master contract for the unions of the state of New Jersey, they are not allowed to engage in research or be judged for reappointment on that basis. So it was important to replenish the tenure stream faculty, and we were able to do that to the tune of more than 180 people during that period of time. And our rule there was that we were not going to hire anybody who was not a publishing scholar. And we began to elevate our expectations for what acceptable levels of scholarly productivity looked like at the campus. That had to be transitional in the interest of fairness, in the interest of treating people well who were not hired with those kinds of expectations, but to move pretty rapidly toward that new set of expectations. And I can talk a little bit later about the cultural work that is required to make that happen, because that's very, very important. You can't create a bifurcated university. You have to have one university, even if people are doing very different things, to achieve success in that institution, that everybody sees a path to recognition and to reward. But in that short period of time, if we take the period from 1978 to 2020, and using the Scopus Index as the sort of master list of scholarly publications, it doesn't contain everything. It doesn't contain books. It doesn't contain artistic products, et cetera. But in the sort of traditional written product, journal publication, book chapters, et cetera, that's the place to go. So Kean first appears in Scopus in 1978. Between 1978 and 2020, Kean faculty produced about 32 publications per year. This year, we will produce about 450. Noting the year is yet to end and we're already above 300. So it's a sea change in the rate of publication. And whereas Kean had virtually no publications in the first and second quartiles of journal quality in the 20th century, now more than half of our publications are in the first and second quartiles in 2025. So this is an indication of how we're doing this. We're providing faculty with supports. We're helping them through a beefed up Office of Sponsored Programs to understand both how they can frame their research for extramural funding, noting that there are challenges in that arena that we haven't faced before, but we're still succeeding in getting grants from NIH and from NSF, even in these straitened times. The year that I came aboard, or the year prior, I should say, to my arrival, we did slightly less than $1 million in funded research activity. That's the research spend side. Inbound funded research this past year was $33 million. So we have made a major shift in how our scholars relate to external funding resources, which then boosts their visibility in the community, boosts the capacity that we're able to recognize. And along with that, we're creating new master's programs and new doctoral programs that can swell the ranks of people who can attach value and spend their time to the research products that we care about. We have been very deliberate when we recruit scholars to say that we are an anchor institution and we care about translational and applied research and showing that communities that we study benefit from what we do. Or the people who present with the maladies that they present with, I mentioned Zika beforehand, will benefit from what we do. And if we're able to be successful at discovering medical responses to that disease. So there are all kinds of ways in which we're trying to line the pieces up to get the people who actively want to have that community benefit. At one level, scholars like to think of themselves as divorced from the world. But you talk to most scholars, and when what they do is actually used somewhere, that's exciting. We have a young scientist who's an invasive species biologist, Dr. Brenna Levine, whose work has focused on a whole range of invasive species over her career. But lo and behold, opportunity comes along in the form of the spotted lanternfly, an invasive species, a great risk to crops. She consults with the state. Her expertise has been very important in trying to figure out how to fight back against this cute but very unfortunate pest. And it has given her a platform to recruit generations now of undergraduate students who become biological researchers and go on to graduate programs in biology. So, these are the kinds of things that help us put together a whole community of effort around the kinds of things that matter to us and marrying research to that social impact, creating that appetite and expectation in people's minds. And sometimes that applied piece can be in tension with the more hieratic traditional research imperatives, but administration can do a lot to align those things, right? In the way that we distribute resources, in the way that we assign courses, in the way that we elevate research and the student experience here at Kean now, from literally the first semester that they're here until the time that they graduate, so that professors are not losing by going in this direction for their research and this direction for their teaching, but we're putting them into closer contact with one another and showing ways that participation in community projects actually extends your ability to gather information and to make new discoveries as a scholar.
You make this seem so easy. You make this all seem like if you just like I'm hearing it, I'm like, this all makes such good sense. And where it makes really good sense too is even pulling back and recognizing that you needed more tenure faculty. And I think that's important right now as it can look really appetizing to your budget to have a bunch of contract lecturers or adjunct faculty people who just sit on campus, one night a week, teach the course, or they're only online to teach the course. That can look really enticing to a budget, right? Especially when we run those numbers and we're like, we can give up these salaries and just pay this, and the cost we make per course goes up and our enrollment's going down. Like, that seems like a really great fix for the financial, you know, if we're just looking at the budget. I'm so glad you brought this up as why tenure faculty are still required and relevant to the institution, because I don't think we talk about this enough. And you've painted this beautiful picture of how your faculty can be so deeply embedded and contributing beyond, I'm going to say just, but we know that they do more than just the classroom, but in a way that helps the institution with all of their, goals and growth and just everything that you're describing. It's like it all perfectly works together, and you get it right over here, you get your tenure faculty right over here, and then it's just this ripple effect of all the positive effects. You get your classroom right over here, and then there's all these ripple effects, right? How does an institution know where to even focus? And this is a loaded question, right? Like, that's a very loaded question, but I think sometimes we take each problem by itself and we just tackle that. It seems like Kean has taken this approach where it's almost like you guys took like a 10,000 flight up and you're looking at it higher, and then you're seeing it, and then you make all these decisions because it's just radically different. And I know that to you, you're like, I'm in this every day, but I talk to people every day, and it's radically different from what a lot of others are doing. And I don't know that I even have a question for you. I'm just in awe, truly, truly in awe.
Oh, well, thank you, Nicole. I mean, it's a pleasure and an honor, and I am so grateful to all of our faculty, whether they are lecturers primarily focused on teaching, or our tenure track faculty who split their efforts between teaching and doing the research that is so meaningful to this community and indeed globally, as we tackle problems from around the world in Asia and South America and Europe and elsewhere. So these are very important observations. I'd say that the question is, all of us have to do things in the most economically efficient way possible, right? That allows us to steward the resources carefully and make sure we're getting maximum bang for the buck. But I think the question is not how to do things more cheaply. The question is how to add value. Each time it's how do I add value? And you've got to look at the cost of adding that value. But if you're constantly focused on a value add mindset, then you're going to find ways to do things more efficiently that will propel more success for your students, for your community, among your alumni, for your faculty. Celebrate those successes. Find examples of how that works. Advertise them on campus, to be sure, but to adjacent constituencies as well. I mentioned the microforest article in the New York Times that Dr. Daniela Shebitz was featured in, and really it was a product of her work with a community organization. And her orientation is, let's celebrate that partnership. It's not just me, my microforest idea. It's how do we take those ideas and actually roll them out so that they're effective? And this creates a virtuous circle that those kinds of announcements get people thinking, hey, gee, well, I could do that. Could I get the university's help in figuring out how to make that happen? And then maybe the university can help write a grant that would work for both the community organization and the scholarly ballast that you get from the university to be able to do these things correctly. And then we're back to a community sharing model where you've got a new revenue stream to help support the work that you're doing in that arena. That's what we do across the length and breadth of Kean, looking for those opportunities, led by a president who understands the value of collaboration and is committed deeply to making sure that we understand what being an anchor institution means and to providing that value stream. And it's one of the reasons that we are growing, perhaps the predominant reason why we are growing as rapidly as we are.
I love it. So look at the value added. Look at the value added. Like, I love this. And I know we're running out of time, and I want to talk about one more. I want to make sure we talk about one more thing, which is this generation to generation opportunity, because I think this is a very important part of what you're doing. I think typically in higher ed, when we think of generation to generation, we're thinking about our current student is going to have a family. And so we're going to improve generations from here on out. That's a great way to think. We are doing that. You guys think about it upwards as well. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So a very large percentage of our student population, very just shy of a majority, uh, is first generation college goers. And so by definition, their families don't have experience with college. But many of them can benefit from contact with a university. So we offer any number of programs in helping people launch small businesses, in helping people to achieve English language proficiency, in helping people to understand what their own degree pathways might look like and what they'd need to do to get up to speed to participate. We have a program that focuses on traditionally aged students, but it's open to others as well. Our Supera language program, where students can begin at Kean as Spanish-speaking monolinguals, get their first 2 years of instruction in Spanish as they learn intensively how to speak English, write English, use English well enough to succeed in a rigorous collegiate setting. And that's what they move to in the junior year. So we can offer people pathways that resonate with parents and aunts and uncles, as well as it resonates with the students and ultimately the families that they create themselves. And we think that that's very important, coupled with what I mentioned earlier about Kean Global's outreach to the some college, no degree audience in their late 20s, early 30s, late. They could. We have people who are in their 60s who are returning for college degrees. So we're really thinking about the full spectrum of humanity. What does it look like up and down the age ladder, and how do you connect those resources? And a point that I made earlier that I want to underscore again here, particularly for the parents, aunts, and uncles of first generation college goers, the way in is probably not going to be a degree. They're not going to see that opportunity in all likelihood out of the gate. But an ELL class, an ESL class, sure. That's something that they can grasp onto. A small business loan workshop. Yeah, a lot of these folks are small business owners, or work in small businesses, or want to establish a small business. So trying to display the university as a resource for something other than the traditional bread and butter of the university. That's a way for, I think, all of us in the higher education environment to think. And it's an important way to think, because that's what gives us a means of entree that isn't ossified in the kind of crusty expectations of the university, but is instead, as I mentioned at the outset, rooted in service, and in the humility of asking people questions about what they need and then trying to provide it.
It's it's really, I mean, I'm gonna say beautiful, but it's cheesy, but it's true. It's what you guys have created is this beautiful, and service is a perfect word for it because you are truly serving the community. I think about some of the things you just mentioned, and I'm like, they would have to typically find this at like a community college where they're fumbling through, night enrollment, fumbling through trying to figure out a schedule to piece together to learn English, right? Like you're describing something that these parents typically wouldn't have, and aunts and uncles typically would have to go to a completely different school to find. It's like, oh, your kid is here at Kean. You want to go to school? That's cool. There's a community college down the street. Go find a night class there. You guys have said, no, 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 no. There's space for you here too. And here's all of the opportunities that we've perfectly curated for your various needs in life. Not many people can say that. So this, David, has really, and I truly, truly, truly mean this. This has been an honor to have you guys here, to have you here talking about Kean. I am a big fan. I'm a big, big fan of what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole. It's my honor and great pleasure to be here with you today and to be able to share these stories. And I hope stories that, when I talk about sharing, that can be understood to apply broadly across a number of different environments. It doesn't have to be urban New Jersey. It could be rural Arizona, and the same kinds of questions apply. The answers, the populations, the needs may be different, but these approaches, I think, are pretty portable.
I completely agree. And I'm going to bet that lots of people's wheels are spinning as they think about their place within their community and how they can better support the community around them. You've provided so that value provided, you've provided a lot of value here for the people listening, who are wrestling with these questions. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.